G'day everyone and welcome back. Today I've got a game changer for you guys. Predator, Killer of Killers just dropped, and holy, I gotta tell you guys, I went into it very yeah, this is a cool, really, pretty cool concept. And by the end of it, I came out like, wow, this is definitely a bang into the Predator franchise. Now guys, let's get stuck into this one. Predator, Killer of Killers just dropped. And let me tell you guys, it's bloody, it's brutal, and it just might be the most ambitious Predator film ever made. Directed by Dan Trachtenberg, the guy who reinvented the franchise with Prey, this animated anthology throws us across centuries, cultures, and battlefields. From Vikings to samurais, to World War II pilots, and yes, a Predator King in a freaking xenomorph cape. Now, let's get stuck into it, guys. Now, this movie here, honestly guys, when I first thought about it or even heard of the concept of they're bringing out a Predator movie that was animated, didn't really like the thought of it because myself, I love my Predator movies, especially the ones that are live action, which they all pretty much are, and I love the fact of seeing a Predator in a suit. But I went into this movie with an open mind and came out absolutely loving it. Not even just myself, but even my wife. She's normally not into it as much as a sci-fi as what she is, but she definitely stopped and watched this movie with me. So yeah guys, this story has 3 main arcs and a final battle. And yeah, really intriguing to see how they brought that together, especially with animated features. And then once you actually watch the movie, you understand why they actually made it animated, because of all the really cool things that you get to see in this movie. Now the first arc is called The Shield, and the Shield is set in 841 and follows a Viking leader named Ursa. Now she's become a Viking leader after a rival faction tribe has come along and killed her father when she was very young, and actually made her kill her father, which therefore he was like, avenge me. So in the Viking way, she's going to avenge him. So therefore the story runs along. After a long while, she ends up being called, well, I think it was called the Valkyrie of the North, where she was just going along and doing her thing and avenging her father. And of course, finally she gets to her spot where she gets to avenge her father, and that's when stuff gets really cool. Her and her Viking parade go up, find the dude that she's going to avenge her father for, and battle with him, and obviously, yeah, he loses and everything's good. She's avenged her father, she's very happy. But that's when the Predator rocks up. And my son has also seen this one, and he reckons out of all the arcs, his favourite was the Predator out of the Vikings, because he was a bit more ruthless, very fast paced, and way more brutal, I reckon. But his main feature was this Predator actually had a fist that he could lock in, and then it would sort of shoot out like a hardcore sonic boom sort of thing, but it would pretty much disintegrate a person or blow into pieces, or blow boats or ice or anything that was around into pieces. And at the start, it's a real close quarters duel between, the Predator and all of the Viking companions. And it ends up, yeah, he does slay a lot of the Viking companions, but it was a really cool thing to see. And once you actually see that first battle, that's where you start to understand why they actually couldn't make this live action, because of pretty much how much aggression and blood and violence that they wanted to put into it, but it turns out being really epic. So the first arc for me really set the tone. It was gritty, fast paced, and Ursa's victory ended up being pretty hollow by, in the end of it, her son died in her arms, and that's where it starts to get cool, because at the end of her arc, she sort of comes out of I don't know if it was a dream or a vision of where she was sitting there holding her son, and she's sitting on a Predator ship. So that was at the end of the first arc you get to see, and the first little taste of what might be happening at the end. Now let's follow on to the second arc, guys. Just quickly everyone, just like to jump in there and say thank you to everyone for liking and watching my videos. All my old subs, I love you all. Thank you for sticking with me. Anyone that's new that's watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out some of my other reviews on my channel. You might just like them. Now, let's continue on with this review, guys. And don't forget, guys, to hang around till the end so you can check out my favourite scenes from Predator, Killer of Killers. And I've got to admit, guys, I'm going to show you some really good scenes and some intense battles. Alrighty guys, the second arc is called The Sword, and it's set in 1609 in Japan, where 2 twin brothers, Kenji and Kiyoshi, have been, made to duel it out by their samurai dad, who's a leader of an empire, who's very sick, and, judging by the historical value of most things, how 2 brothers end up, destroying empires, he doesn't want that to happen, so he's going to make them duel to find out who's going to be the empire. And it ends up that Kenji doesn't want to fight his brother, so he refuses to, and Kiyoshi, actually seeing his father's disapproval for both of them not wanting to fight, ends up attacking Kenji and slicing his face, and Kiyoshi wins, and Kenji runs away and to leave the castle and obviously not be the emperor. So next thing you know, it's been 20 years later, and both the boys' father has passed away, and Kiyoshi has taken leadership, and Kenji's actually out of the castle working in the fields, but he's actually become a shinobi, and a pretty good shinobi at that, let me tell you that one. And he hears the bells that his father has died. He knows Kiyoshi's taken over, and it's for his time to strike a little bit of revenge on his brother. So he suits up in his shinobi gear, and I've got to tell you what, guys, the castle scene where he, goes in is one of the best scenes I've ever seen, especially the scene he's going in as a shinobi and trying to keep quiet and killing every other samurai around, and in the coolest and quietest way. But unfortunately, doesn't always go everything, the best way that it can, and eventually some of the guards see him and set off the bells, and he's known to be there. So next thing you know, Kiyoshi is starting to set up, get his samurai gear on, because he knows someone's coming to get him, but he doesn't know it's his brother. Next thing you know, Kenji comes busting through, finds Kiyoshi, kills all his samurai, and they start to have a mean battle. Ends up Kenji doesn't really want to kill him by the end of it. He just slices his face, but unfortunately for Kiyoshi, where he was leaning on the banister from a previous battle, he fell off the banister because it was destroyed. Kenji seemed like he got a little bit upset about that, but he wasn't the only one watching. There was someone sitting in the banisters watching him with his thermal vision, and next thing you know, Kenji gets attacked by the predator. And first off, he doesn't really want to fight him because he's pretty big and he's never seen anything like that, so he tries to get away. Unsuccessfully most of the time, but enduring that, you get to see the predator go through, and a lot of samurais come in because they're thinking actually that the predator killed their new emperor, Kiyoshi, but in actual fact, accidentally it was Kenji. So Kenji's trying to get away from this predator, the predator's trying to chase him down. There was one cool scene where Kenji's hanging on the bottom of a like a Japanese hut. The predator sees his thermal vision, but at that stage Kenji pops up, stabs the predator in the foot, and Kenji gets away after that. And miraculously, after Kenji gets away from the predator, he gets outside the city and everything seems to be all good. And then that was where a good little twist came for me, and I didn't even really see that one coming. A samurai helmet drops at his feet that was actually on Kiyoshi's head, and Kiyoshi pops up out of nowhere and he's still alive, and those two start to have a little bit of a battle, but Kenji's trying to stop him because he's trying to alert him that there's something else here that they both are going to need to fight together. And it ends up, yes, that happens. They both fight together against the predator, and again, same thing like the first arc, something sad has to happen. So of course, in the battle, the brothers end up joining forces and beating the predator in an epic way. Wait till you see that one, guys. And then next thing you know, Kiyoshi took a little bit too much damage from the predator and ends up passing away. And lucky enough for him, his brother Kenji was with him and was able to, not let him die by himself. But then that's the end of that arc, and that's when you see Kenji actually sitting on the predator ship as well, with a collar around his neck, and he has no clue what's going on. And yeah, he actually gets to see the Viking lady that's there, Ursa, but she doesn't understand Japanese, he doesn't understand Scandinavian, so they can't really communicate. I think she calls him a little bit of a weasel and tells him to go away. So then he goes and sits in his corner, and that's about the end of the story for the Japan arc, guys. Now, the final arc that we get for the characters pretty much is called The Bullet, and that is actually pretty cool. It's over World War II, over the Atlantic Ocean, and it's pretty much ends up being the first time you get to see a predator dogfight. Now, this story follows John Torres. Now, at the start, he's just a young fella hanging out with his dad, watching, what were they? They were crop dusters go across a cornfield with his dad. His car breaks down, his dad comes up, gives him a bit of fatherly love, but at the end of it sort of tells him he has to go on his own way, hands him a form, and it's a draft form to go to World War II, obviously. So the next scene you get to see is he's on a Navy air carrier ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, fixing up a plane called the Bullet. And he really looks like he's got some love for this plane called the Bullet, but he's not the best mechanic. So next thing you see is one of his commanding officers come out and ask him how's he going with his plane, and he shows him. He's like, oh, I reckon it's ready to roll, you know. Starts it up. Nah, she bungs out and goes, mate, you got to learn how to fix your plane better, because if you can fix your plane better, you'll end up being able to fly better. Torres doesn't really like this, but then in that little instance, they start to hear some conflict happening up on deck. So they go up on deck and check it out, and a plane has made it back from an interaction with something that he keeps yelling out. There was hooks, they were ripping apart my plane, there were hooks. And this fella's sitting there with one arm and he's screaming, and the next thing you know, all right, scramble the boys, we're going up to see what this is. So next thing you know, to me honestly, it was a mean mashup of Top Gun versus sci-fi horror. These planes load up with their pilots, head off, actually see enemy pilots, so they engage them, take them down, and they think it's all good. But whilst they're out doing that, John Torres is back on the ship trying to get his plane going, but he also notices on one of the damaged planes that came back, there's a bit of alien technology that he hasn't seen, and he's going to go check that out. So he grabs that, takes that back to the garage. One of his mates is like, don't really think you should be messing with this, eh, mate? And he's like, nah, she'll be right, mate, alright? It'll be all good. So he starts, you know, tinging it with a screwdriver, hitting it with a drill, nothing's working. Next thing you know, he pulls out a blowtorch, hits it with the blowtorch, it pings open like it's starting to work. His mate's on a plane trying to work with the plane, starts up the plane. Obviously the engine starts up, a bit of heat comes. Next thing you know, this thing shoots out a hook or an anchor, nails the engine, and the other end acts like a magnet, rips it out and just takes off into the sky and rips the motor clean out. Scares his mate half to death, scares John Torres half to death, but then he realizes that his mates that are up there that are pilots aren't going to be able to defend themselves against what's up there. So he decides he's going to go run up to the communications tower, let them know what's cracking, and then they'll go from there. When he actually reaches up there, they're like, they're out of range, mate, we can't actually get to them. And he's like, shit, what are we going to do? And he's like, get another pilot up there. Old mate's like, there's no more pilots. What are we going to do? He's like, there's one more pilot left. So he goes down back to his little rust bucket called the Bullet, starts this bad boy up and launches out, because he wants to go tell his mates they're not going to be able to defeat this thing and come back to the ship so we can work something out. So off he goes, trying to find his mates. Finds his mates after they've destroyed the enemy. They're really happy. They're thinking, yeah, we could take on anything. Next thing you know, out of nowhere, he's begging them, right? He's like, oi, we got to go back. We got to go back. Nah. And they're all telling him, no, Torres, you don't know what you know. You don't know nothing, mate, all right? Next thing you know, a hook comes out of the clouds, grabs a plane, yanks it back in. Everyone starts freaking out. They're like, all right, it's time to engage. Torres is like, no, mate, it's not time to engage. And he's like, his commanding officer's like, I give the orders, we're going to engage. So next thing you know, it's one of the most epic battles I've ever seen. A Predator dogfight. You get to see this Predator handling a ship just like, you know, good old Maverick out of Top Gun, and he's destroying these boys. Like, hooks are going through people. And even at one stage, it was really cool. Me and my wife, and I've got to love her, she's got a little bit of nerd in her. At one stage, the Predator might be thinking like he might be getting a little bit, you know, overwhelmed by him, and he shoots out the net that we've all seen in the Predator franchise, shoots out the net, wraps it around a plane, and rest is history. We all know what happens with the net, that's for sure. But that wasn't the only cool thing. He shot out another little thing that almost looked like a mine, right? The mine comes out, and it's got 4 little whips on it, goes around, lands on the plane. Those little red whips wrap around the plane and acts just like the net. Another little cool feature that was in this one. So now it's just down to pretty much Torres and his main officer, and they're trying to work out how to take this thing down. And gotta admit, it was pretty cool to see, but again, wouldn't know how it would really work, considering I feel the planes would have a lot of heat in them, even though they're flying in the air and, you know, it's really cold up there, but still they would have a lot of heat from firing their guns and the motors going. But what they decide is they're going to climb altitude, ditch their plane, turn their motors off, spin around. He's not going to be able to see them. Bob's your nephew. But of course, nothing ever works out that way. So the commanding officer decides, I'll give you a bit of time, Torres. Bang, takes off a bit longer. Predator takes him down. Torres has disappeared. He's turned his motor off. Predator doesn't think there's anyone left, turns around, starts heading down. Next thing you know, Torres is sort of gliding behind him, lines him up with his machine gun, pops one of his little engines, Predator knows there's someone there now, doesn't he? Not the very best place to be. Taurus flies past him, ends up finding all the enemy, flying through all the enemy. I'm talking like flak. Then he flies through all the enemy ships trying to get this Predator down, and ends up doing so. And that was pretty cool to see. And then that's even not the end of his arc. He ends up surviving that, going back home to where he was, working in his garage. And while he's working in his garage, he hears a rumbling outside, walks outside, and there's a massive Predator ship above his shop. And that's where Torres disappears. And next thing you know, he's on the Predator ship with the rest of them, trying to talk to the Viking lady from, 1841 and the samurai dude from 1609. Not really that good on the communication, but himself, he learned a little bit of Japanese. Not the best, obviously, but he learned a little bit so he could communicate a little bit with the Japanese fella. But obviously, communication is very hard between these lot, and they end up fighting a little bit, and Torres just sits down and tries to work out what's cracking. So now we're at the final battle, guys, and this was really cool to see. Especially, they're on the Predator planet, obviously. They're gonna get forced into fighting. Like, realistically, you could read the story the way it was gonna go, and they got three main people that have beaten Predators. Obviously, we know any sci-fi people that if you've beaten a Predator, they take that pretty seriously in their world. So these three people get put into like a coliseum, sort of like Gladiator, and they're gonna have to battle each other in order to end up battling the final big Predator, the king of the Predators that they call King Grendel for some reason. But in himself, he is really cool to see. He's absolutely huge, as well as he's the one that's got the Xenomorph Tails cape. And when you get to see that, that is absolutely epic for any sci-fi lover to actually see. And of course, usual Predator ways, they don't want to fight all three of them as a team, which, you would think that was going to happen. No, he wanted all three of these people to fight each other. So you got the Viking lady, the Japanese fella, and John Torres, all from different time periods, different levels of aggression, as well as different battle weapons. So the Predator King's like, alright, I'll give you all weapons from your era. And that's funny because the Viking lady gets an axe, Japanese fella gets a samurai sword, but when it gets to John Torres, this is the little Easter egg I love, and you get to see it in a couple of movies. He actually gets the musket that originally you first see out of Predator 2, and then you get to see it in Prey a couple of times. Now, that was really cool to see, but obviously, 1942, I don't think he was using muskets. So it was a little bit unfair for him. So, of course, they have to battle each other in order to find out who's going to battle the king. And then, just as I thought, guys, the Viking lady, very aggressive. She just wants to kill everyone so she can end up going to Valhalla and seeing her son, which we all know is the Viking way. The Japanese fella's trying to be a bit more, come on now, if we all work together, we could actually take this fella down, because me and my brother took one down together and we worked as a team. But again, communication levels are really bad in this one, because you got Scandinavian, Japanese, and English. Not really the best communication, a lot of barriers there. So the Viking lady doesn't really listen for a long time. They're battling. The Predator King thinks, let's make this a bit more interesting. Puts this massive predator creature looking thing in, and it really got me because the actual head on this creature is located at the top, so it'll flick you up with these tusk things and then eat you from the top. And that was pretty cool to see. And then even more of a cool twist, John Torres is the first thing that gets eaten by this, but lucky enough he goes down whole, sort of like I guess a snake would eat someone. But on the inside he finds couple of weapons that was actually in there from a predator that got eaten, and he starts trying to hack his way out, while the other two actually finally on the outside, the Viking and the Japanese, finally work together and decide, alright, we could take this beast down. They take it down, and next thing you know, the beast actually gets swept away, sort of like by an alien bulldozer, and John Torres is still in there, but they think he's dead. So therefore, the Viking and the Japanese have to keep fighting. So the samurai and the Viking keep fighting, and it's only near the end where the king's like, you know what, I'm just going to kill you both, because the Japanese fella decides he's not going to fight anymore and play their games, he's going to play his own game. And then the Viking lady gets pretty upset about that, because she has to die in battle, obviously, and if He's not gonna battle her, she's not gonna battle him, so therefore it's over. So just before the king hit his things to blow their neck up, John Torres pops out in this little like speeder bike sort of thing and saves everyone. He drops their collars off, everyone gets on the speeder bike, hoons up the top of this huge skull towards pretty much the king of the predators. This was pretty cool to see. As they're charging towards the king of the predators, he launches his spear at the front of the speeder, knocks them all off, and then therefore has an epic battle with everyone. Wow. And I've got to admit, that battle was pretty cool to see, guys. And it ends up, yes, John Torres gets on one of the spaceships, starts it up, and starts to leave the planet. But as usual, there's always twists and everything along the lines, and the Viking lady ended up, you would think, getting what she wanted, and she ends up, right, so John Torres starts taking off, alright? Then the Predator's like, you know what, we got him. Shoots pretty much an anchor into the ship, holds him there. Viking lady's like, I got this, boys, don't avenge me. She gets on it, slides it down, breaks it, they're able to get away. She's down there talking to the King of Kings in her language like, yep, I got you. You, my boys got away, you didn't win this one. He turns around at this stage, says in Predator speak, let's all go hunting. And next thing you see, all these ships start coming up and start going for the boys. And that's where you get to see the end of the Predator scene pretty much. There are some epic battles in there, but we'll get to that, guys, don't you worry. And they take off, Torres and the samurai take off into the sunset, very romantic, a little bit weird. And the Viking lady is left with the Predators, and you would honestly think that they're just going to slay her and that was it. But no, that's where the next twist comes into it, and then the pretty much movie ends. You get to see the Viking lady back in cryo, because she's in cryo because obviously you got them from 841, 1609 and 1942. Well, that's a big difference in the time there, guys. So they had to obviously cryo them to be able to put them in one era to be able to fight. Well, she goes back in cryo, which I don't think she'd be very happy about. And as they're taking her in cryo, they're walking past, and there's a lot more of these cryo tubs as they're walking through this area. And they specifically focus on one tub as they're going past, and it happens to be the lady from Prey. Now, I know there was a big controversy because they were meant to do a second Prey, and now you get to see that she's in this cryo tube, and that might be the way that they're going with the Prey 2. They might actually be making it animated, which I guess wouldn't be too bad to see. Alright, just like to give you my thoughts on Predator Killer of Killers and a couple of scenes that I really like. Now, one of the first things is, yeah, obviously I wasn't really excited too much about seeing that it was going to be animated, but it ended up being pretty cool. My son he was like, definitely Dad, you're going to love it, even though it's animated, you're going to love it, Dad, because he really liked the Spider-Man Spideyverse that they brought out in the animated series, and that's sort of the same style that this movie comes out in. But I've got to admit, the sounds, the visuals, like, just even, you understand it once you get to watch the movie that what they wanted to put in it, they wouldn't have been able to do in real life. Like, there was a scene where the John Torres fella flies through an actual town on the side of his plane and flies through the town, sort of like a pod race almost. It was pretty cool to see, but that's where you get, they wouldn't be able to actually do it in live action like probably everyone wanted, but it's understandable. As well as like the cinematics in this. Me and my wife both love the fact that even though it's an animated film, they still made it like a proper film. Like the cinematics happening, like when you're watching John Torres trying to work to start his ship, or not start his ship, sorry, start his plane, and he's like, see, I'm getting too excited, guys, and he like breaks off one of his levers, and you see the emotional tension from the front where he's struggling to try and work out how to fix his plane. And yeah, the cinematics was just really cool how they added that in with the animated movie. And you know, I come from the first animated movie, you know, good old Toy Story, we love that, and that was really cool. And this one really just blew my mind, guys. Even though it's an animated movie, definitely go check out Predator Killer of Killers. Now let's have a chat about a couple of my favourite scenes. Obviously, the first time you get to see the Predator pop in the Viking arc. Now, even though he didn't really have swords or anything sharp on him, he was a real big bulky fella. Looked like he'd lost his arm, but yeah, the little boom fist thing that he had, that was really cool. And Like, he was putting people into pillars, blowing their heads off, grabbing skulls, ripping. It was really cool to see. And like, yeah, the gore of it almost meets sort of like, you know, the Japanese anime, and really cool as well because I'm a Naruto boy, as you all see. Now, one of the other scenes that I really liked in the first arc was pretty much in the end battle, where she finally works out how to sort of avoid the thermal, but then obviously doesn't work out that she has to, you know, stay in the under the ice to keep the thermal off her. So she gets out of under the ice and starts running around him. He still can't focus on her properly because his helmet got buggered up, and he's down to just focusing on her. So he gets cranky, uses his sonic boom fist and starts blowing up all the ships that are iced around in the area that they are. She climbs up one of the ships that are behind him, gets this mean anchor, comes down, wraps the rope around him, breaks the ice. They go through the ice, and it reminded me a lot of the Alien versus Predator, when the alien in the end finally got dragged into the bottom of the ice, and that's where the Predator ended up. Now guys, I've got to admit, I think the second arc happens to be my favourite. Maybe just because it led along the lines of more of a anime cartoon with the gore, the shinobis, the samurais, and I really love that. Love my Naruto, and it felt really along those lines. I think, yeah, one of my favourite scenes, of course, was when Kenji was first coming back into the city and trying to get to his brother. Like, the way that he took out the guards were really cool, and of course, straight shinobi way. And then, yeah, I guess my other favourite, I honestly can't tell you guys, I think the whole second arc was just a mass of beautiful, like, you got to see a lot of samurais, one shinobi going through, the Predator always just sitting back and watching. I love that in all these arcs. Before the Predators attack, they just sit back and watch, and they just check it out. Maybe take someone out randomly if they want to, but no, they're just sitting back observing, waiting for their time, waiting for their target of who they really want, and I love seeing that. Like, the second arc really was awesome. Definitely the sword. Especially, like, yeah, when Kenji eventually got out, and the second twist happened where his brother popped back up, and then they both had to battle the Predator. That was really cool, because I actually thought that Kenji was going to have to fight the Predator himself, and you might actually get to see maybe, you know, a bit more shinobi way, ninja way of how he's going to take him out. But it ended up being teamwork that took that Predator out. And then, like, the whole emotional weight of the end of it, like, his brother said something along the lines of, leaves grow together on the tree, but they fall alone. And, you know, that was the whole thing of, we may be twins and we're born together, but we're going to die alone. And Kenji actually says to Kyoshi at that stage, but you're not alone, I'm with you. And that's when Kyoshi passes away from his, you know, wounds from the Predator. Like, the second arc was really cool, guys. Like, it pushed it to another level, especially, yeah, you understand it. That's definitely why they couldn't do this in live action, with how much gore and what they actually wanted to portray in this one. And even the cinematics in the Japan scenes that they have, like the fields, the cities, everything was just portrayed really well. And I would say my favourite scenes from the third act, yeah, it probably would be mainly the dogfight scenes. There was a couple of really cool dogfight scenes, but they were mainly from the Predator. They weren't from the Torres character or the other people. They, you know, they said a couple of cool little slang things that were pretty cool, but the whole thing that I loved about the third act, the bullet they call it, is the Predator dogfight. He's a different looking Predator altogether. He's only got one eye. He doesn't really seem to have dreads. He almost looked like he was a bald Predator, and very, very aggressive and not the nicest of dogfighter. But it was really cool to see how they portrayed a Predator in a dogfight, because we've never seen that before. All we've ever seen is them fly in, or possibly in one of the other movies, The Predator, they jumped on a ship and took down one of their ships, but it wasn't really a dogfight because there was people that were doing that and not actual planes. And then the fact of they were trying to fight alien spacecraft with, you know, planes from 1942, and they didn't have the speed, they didn't have the firepower, but gotta admit, they still put up a hell of a fight. And with Torres' thinking, and that was the cool thing with Torres, if anything of all the arcs, his arc felt more relatable, because damn, this fella had some bad luck while he was fighting this Predator. Like, snapping off his gear lever, as well as one of his fuel tanks caught fire and he couldn't drop it, so in his mind he was going to climb out and knock the fuel tank off. And yeah, a lot of mishaps happened when he was trying to climb out of obviously a plane that's flying really fast. He's wedged down the throttle and the stick with tools, and they didn't hold out, and then he's trying to bang off a fuel tank with a hammer, loses his hammer, ends up having to kick it off. But in doing so, that's where he found out that the Predator focuses mainly on heat and, not the planes themselves. It's the heat that he was going after. And once he finds out that, that's where they're able to turn the tide on that Predator and bring him down. And then, yeah, the final battle that you get to see with, all three of them, plus the Predator, the King of Predators, King Grendel, was, really cool to see. But I think the arcs really made it more of a movie than just that end fight. The end fight wasn't as long as what you would think, and realistically, I don't think anyone died. The King didn't die. He took a lot of damage, but he didn't die. The Viking lady didn't die, so she didn't go to Valhalla like she wanted. The Japanese samurai, he may have lost an arm, but him and Torres got away in the ship, and now they're being hunted afterwards. But I think the main thing about that end final battle scene was when you got to see the King Predator walk out with his xenomorph tail cape. That was really cool, and if anyone was going to 3D print one of them, put me down on the list, because I'll definitely wear a xenomorph cape tail. That would be epic. And we did hear from Incredibles that you shouldn't wear capes, but that is one cape I would definitely wear. So there it is, guys. Predator, Killer of Killers. 10 out of 10. Go check this bad boy out. Maybe animated. Open your mind to it, because even I did. I love my Predators. Everyone goes around saying that Predator 1 is their favorite. I'm probably the weird one. I love Predator 2. More the fact of, Danny Glover wasn't really a fully trained special operative or, had a little bit of training. He was just a hardcore old school cop that took a Predator down, even using the own Predator's tools, which was really cool to see. But yeah, back on topic, guys. Predator, Killer of Killers, 10 out of 10. Blood, gore, action, even really good storyline, good twists, and really good Easter eggs. Definitely go check this bad boy out, guys. Finally, we've come to the end of it, guys, and I will admit, this movie from the start did not go into it expecting that I would come out loving it, and it was such a banger for the new Predator franchise. And being that it's the 6th movie to the 8th movie in the Predator franchise, it's pretty intense. But I want to hear what you guys think about it. Have you guys heard of Predator's Killer of Killers? If you have, let me down in the comments about what your favorite scene or segment was. Did you like the shield, the sword, or the bullet? Or did you just like the final end scene, the final battle between the King Grendel? Now, as well, I've got to admit with him, it was pretty cool to see him with all the alien tails. Now, just quickly, guys, before we leave, I'd like to thank all my old subs for liking and subscribing. Anyone that's new that's watching that's made it this far, don't forget to like, subscribe. And if you like this review, check out some of my other reviews on my page. You might just like those bad boys. And as usual, guys, I will catch yous on the next one.